your leadership should be able to accept any type of communication, right? Good leadership can pivot in different ways and be dynamic to the people that they're leading.
Welcome to the LMF Network Podcast. My name is Sonya Barlow, the host, CEO, and founder. This podcast is all about building our careers and confidence with a mission to build the careers and confidence of 25,000 people by 2025 through mentoring, masterclasses, and meaningful connections. For us, this podcast is about sharing stories, highlighting incredible figures, learning about their career journeys, how they overcome failure, rejection, and imposter syndrome, what we can do to build our confidence, be our biggest cheerleaders, and really define as well as achieve our version of success.
It's a special episode because we have Taboola her in the house. We're talking all things managing life, productivity hacks, thinking about your career, building your confidence, and just figuring it out when you don't really know what you're figuring out. Thank you to Taboola for sponsoring this episode. And without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to our guest today. So, Kate?
Yeah.
What is it that you get up to? What do you do at Taboola? And talk us through your career journey. And then we'll go to Serafina and we'll go to Chris.
Yeah, sure. Thank you for having us. It's great to be here. I'm Kate Rose. I head up the advertising account management team for Europe and Middle East. I'm originally from New York, so I've been over here in London for about 4 years. Came right before COVID, which is great. I'm originally from New York. I've been married for about 8 years. Just really excited to be here. Pretty much always been on the advertising side of the business. Started off in sales. Actually, my first job was door-to-door selling to Verizon Fios, which is like a telecom service. It ended when I was getting chased by a dog. So from then on, I thought, you know what, let's go bigger. We can do better than this. It was a recession in 2008, mind you. I just kind of fell back into New York City and started off at big ad companies at Ogilvy and Mather. And I found Taboola completely on a whim. A friend of mine was like, I just had a really bad interview, but you'll love it. And so I thought, okay, great. And I did love it. And the rest is kind of history. I've been on the journey for almost 10 years, or 10 years now, actually, maybe today or something. So it's been a great ride. I've been able to have kind of seize a lot of opportunities, but also be challenged. And being over here is something I didn't exactly imagine, but I'm really happy I'm here.
That's wild. Thank you. We'll come to your dog story in just a second. Chris, yourself?
Yes, so my name's Chris. Been in Taboola 3.5 years. So I've got 2 young kids, 2 beautiful kids. I've been married for nearly 7 years now. Similarly, I've been in kind of the digital space for around about 10 years now, but kind of flipped between the advertiser side, brand side, etc. So yeah, coming here today to help the team, support the cause, and of course be open and transparent as we like to be.
Yeah, thank you. And Serafina?
Thanks, Susie. Thanks very much for having us here today. Beautiful setting. So I'm Serafina Davey. I am the kind of opposite number to Kate. So I manage our publisher relationships for EMEA at Taboola. I've been at Taboola 7 years. So I actually started as an IC, so sales, just on my own, selling whatever I could sell, advertising, publishing, whatever you wanted, and then kind of grew our sort of emerging markets team before moving into the kind of account management, so existing business space, which is now the role I hold. But I'm actually on maternity leave at the moment, so I've just popped into town without my children, so I'm feeling quite airy, quite light, quite overexcited, as Kate and Chris will testify, because I've just spoken at them 19 to the dozen for about 10 minutes. I'm going back to work in a few months, so having discussions at the moment about what that looks like. And really looking forward to speaking to everyone today. So great to see my colleagues who I don't get to see very often.
Yeah.
I mean, do your colleagues have anything to ask you? You haven't seen her for a while.
We did just have a good catch up. Serafina is thankfully a good friend of mine, so I get to see her. Not nearly as enough, but yeah, we're happy to chat if you want to start.
I was also expecting a baby. I was expecting a baby to take the heat away from us, wasn't it? Yeah.
I was expecting a baby. So for context, Serafina asked if she could bring the baby in the studio, and we said yes, absolutely. But that brings me on to something that popped into my mind when you asked is, you're on mat leave, you're busy with family, kids, work, you have life commitments and kind of heading up, a whole region. How do you manage the many life commitments that you have? How do you keep yourself sane or grounded? The reason I ask that is because let's look at the stats. We're generally online for over 3 hours. Day to day, we scroll on our phones more than 28 times daily. On average, I think the stats were crazy. There was something like we waste more than 3 hours a day just on emails. I don't know about you, but everyone's trying to email me right now. And I don't know why. And despite GDPR, I'm on all these newsletters that I never subscribe to, and it's just constantly a ping, right? The worst thing I can hear right now is the iPhone ping or the iPhone alarm. I absolutely hate it. And yesterday, I kid you not, I was just sitting there in peace, and I could hear the Skype ringtone in my head. And I haven't used Skype for a while. But I realized that that's just where your brain's at. Your brain's always functioning, is always on. I don't have kids, but I have life commitments. So I guess my question in summary is, how do you manage all the things that you have going on, and how do you keep yourself kind of sane when everything around you is super noisy? I think, Serafina, I might start with you, if that's okay.
Sure. So I think there's kind of two parts of that in that being on maternity leave and being at work are kind of two different ways of balancing things. So talking kind of now, I suppose, like my full-time job is essentially looking after my baby and my toddler. So I've got a 2.5-year-old.
Oh, you've got another baby.
Yeah, I've got two.
Okay.
So I've got a baby and a toddler. So and I'm on maternity leave. My partner works full-time. So I suppose balancing my responsibilities now is a bit simpler in that there's quite a simple focus of make sure the children are fed, happy, looked after. It's a slightly easier way of existing in that. I have one focus and I don't think about work. Right? I don't have a headspace at the moment which is about work, and I think that's why maternity leave is such an important, or paternity leave, parental leave is such an important period of time where you do just switch off. And it is a really good way of relearning how to switch off. And I wanted to make this point because when I returned from maternity leave last time, I felt like I basically just got rid of, I had 40,000 emails or something. I shift deleted all of them. I just highlighted them all and just deleted them. I was like, I haven't dealt with these for a year. I don't need to deal with these. Somebody's dealt with them. And if they're important, they'll come up again. And I had this really renewed energy and focus about prioritization, because at the end of the day, I had to go get my kid and be focused on her. And I really tried to take that into my work when I went back after maternity leave the first time, and keep that sense of, I need to get this stuff done within the window of time that I've got, which is the hours that I'm paid to be at work. And when I finish work, I have to be 100% present for my child and put the phone away. And I felt I had this really renewed energy, but I could see it slipping. After kind of 6 months of being back, you got sucked into, there's lots of emails, there's lots of, there's calls encroaching onto evening, coming into morning, over lunchtime. And it was really hard to maintain that. And when I lost that, I would look back at that energy that I had when I came back from leave, when I'd been really focused on, it's me and my baby and I'm looking after her and I'm keeping her alive. That's my goal. And I don't have the noise. I took that into work and I lost it a bit. And I think this time when I get back to work, I really want to not lose it. And I think that's a lot about maintaining the distance between, this is work. I don't have the email ping. I'm either on my email or I'm not on email. That's completely binary for me. I don't have an alert for an email. If someone needs to ring me, they ring me, but that's it. So I don't have my phone with me when I'm playing with my kids. Phone is somewhere else, different room, because otherwise you look at it. So I try to be very strict about that. And I really want to maintain that when I get back to work this time, because it feels, when I'm on maternity leave, while looking after children is absolutely exhausting, it's a different kind of distraction because there isn't so much noise for me. For me, it isn't as noisy. You can be quite focused. And so that's how I've managed.
Well, an absolutely great answer. But also, I have this new found energy in me where I'm like, I'm just going to go shift delete my emails too. I'm like, what I'm hearing you say is, why are things just clogging up your inbox? If it's urgent, they have different means of contacting you, but you don't need to get overwhelmed by what's coming in your inbox.
I think it's
in the same way.
Yeah, I think I agree. I think that it takes a certain level of experience and maturity to get to that point. I think for, my 20s and early 30s even, it's that the grind. You're constantly on, and you think if
you were getting chased by dogs. I wanted to go back to that.
Yeah, it only got better for that now. I was getting chased by dogs. But I think, working in New York City and it's a constant grind. There's just the culture there is, you would brag about working weekends and late night. It became a super toxic kind of way to work, but it became the way to work. And you have to kind of grow up or decide that that's not good for you. And I think it takes a lot of ability to set your own boundaries. So setting boundaries is liberating once you can set them and abide by them. But to Serafina's point, you have to hold yourself accountable, because you could easily slip in and feed off of other people's energy. Other people are constantly wanting you. It might be urgent to them, but if it's not urgent to you, don't let it be. So it sounds simple, they're just words, but if you start to practice your own boundaries, people will respect them. And if they don't, then that's something, you kind of cross that bridge when you get there. But I think it's super liberating to go, wow, when I'm not online 24/7, A, it isn't urgent, and B, I look like I have a life because I actually got one. I'll never forget when a really good friend of mine was like, you need a life. Like, you just need to get a life. You're constantly working. You're like, this is lame. Like, it's brutal. And I looked up and I'm like, I work out, I go to the gym, I go out, this is fun. No, I needed a life.
And my siblings tell me on a daily basis that I need to get a life. I'm like, this is a life.
This is a great life.
I was like, this is a life.
Yeah.
But they're like, no, honestly, you need to get a life that doesn't revolve around LMF. And I'm like, oh, like, what? Is that possible?
Yeah, but the thing is, you're very good at giving other people the advice, right? You sound really coherent and clear when you're telling them. Like, for example, if someone's off work, you're like, don't worry about it. We've got it covered. Honestly, just relax, take the time off.
Yeah.
When it's you, it's not as easy to do.
Yeah.
So you need to, it's all about that time management, but at the same time being realistic. Like, for me, if I'm not going to do something properly, I try not to bother even doing it or even looking at it. That's easier said than done. But again, with experience and time, that arrives, right? And if you're going to bed, it's midnight, 1, whatever, and you're checking your phone. Someone said the other day in the office, I think it was, if you're not going to deal with that email there and then, or have the time to look and deal with that, don't look at it.
Yeah.
Your phone is not, and it's always that, I haven't seen my phone for a couple of hours. Oh no, what have I missed? You pick it up and you've missed absolutely nothing.
A series of messages.
I should go to lunch tomorrow.
I need to scroll. That meeting's still in tomorrow. Oh, I've still got a lunch. Like, nothing's gonna. We're not saving lives here.
Exactly.
Like, we're just doing fun. We're having fun. Yeah, we're not doctors. So there's pressure out there.
Yeah.
It's not what we face. It's a different kind.
And the reason we're talking about managing life is because Taboola's theme for International Women's Day this year is around managing life, and we want to really bring that to the surface and talk about, when we say life, what are the different intersectionalities and different kind of placements, different nodes that come together to build life? And how do you take yourself away from that a little bit too? So we speak to a lot of young people and young professionals and those at university level. And so I've got a few questions that have come directly from them that I want to bring to you all today. One question was from some students that were actually mentoring at Bayes Business School. So an individual asked, and they wanted to ask you, did you figure out that you could set boundaries and you could manage life after a certain life experience or after a certain age? And what I mean by that, and what they meant by that, was when you're at university, you're told, you've got the degree, you go hustle, you go do the work. The early 20s, you hustle. But hustle in the sense of like, you're constantly working, you're always on, you have to do more than like 10 things. You have to have a side hustle and a passion project, and you have to think about your future, and you have to be reading, you have to be listening to podcasts, and you have to be like totally in the know of everything. It's exhausting me even saying it, right? And then you get to a point where people are like, you come into your own when you're 30s and 40s are the new 20s, and you have all these like life mantras that are now on like some kind of mug somewhere, right? But you're taking them as Bible, you're taking it as this is the way it goes. So when you're talking, all of you, about managing life, what was that moment that you were like, I need to actually manage life because this is not sustainable?
For me, it was the kids.
Okay.
Because the first one, because again, you go back to previous when I first started in the game, it was very much, oh, look at that person, they're here till 8 in the evening, you're leaving at kind of 5, and it was the assumption that, oh, they're here longer, so they're working more or they're working harder. That's absolutely not the case. The challenge now is obviously a lot of it goes to social media, where if you're watching, you just assume that, oh, I have to listen to a podcast 5 a day, I have to read 10 books a quarter, and then you think, oh, am I missing out by not doing that? You're not. You just got to set your own boundaries and what works for you. In the good old uni days, I could never work through the night. I know like a lot of the guys were, they would be the library creatures from midnight all the way through to tomorrow. I just couldn't do that. I'd rather get up early and then crack on. And then you'd flip, and there was no difference in the quality of work we were doing. It was just that we operate on different zones, if you like. So for me, it's all about just what works for you, the time management. And then again, for me, it was kids. It was understanding that, when you do something, do it properly. When you focus on something, dedicate your time to that individual thing. You don't need to clear your inbox for the sake of it. You need to clear it because you're doing what's needed to clear it. When you're focused on the kids, phone in the other room if it's on, or if you can find it, if they haven't thrown it somewhere.
The kids are on it. They're like,
Yeah, and then you're just with them. Enjoy the moment. Live for like that.
That's super sound advice, and I love the fact you're sharing that. But again, I guess for some reason this sofa is the kid sofa, right? Somehow this sofa is that we don't have kids.
Yeah.
And so so what I mean by that is I can see a clear differentiate between kids and not kids, because that comes with extra responsibilities. But for two people who are women and maybe expected to have kids because society still puts those expectations on you, or who just want to have a life otherwise, or who have so much else going on, how do you not get into the, well, I don't have a kid at home to go back to, and so I can just stay in the office for another hour, for another 3 hours, or actually in the same way as somebody who might have kids, right? And I've heard this in the office, you're going home at 5, you're leaving early. At the same way when you don't have kids, it's like, you're going home at 5, you're leaving early, and you're like, no, that's when my shift ends.
Yeah, no, I definitely understand. And I think when I remember it, it comes to my mind in a few different moments where I remember seeing women leave early or at the time they needed to leave. And, I'm staying till, and others are staying till 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock. And that's not true equity either. Equity, we talk a lot about females, males, or whatever, but that's also not equity that, I don't have kids, so I can stay later. I choose to stay later. I could also have gotten a life, but I didn't. So I stayed later. And I think when I got here, I was about 31 or 32 over to London, and just different cultures, completely different cultures, and a culture that I really tried and learned and eventually now embrace and love and respect. And it's not just the UK, but I work, across the region like we do. And you learn so much about yourself through other people and how they lived and how their cultures kind of show them balance. I grew up in a family that it was all about work ethic, work hard, not from a lot of money, we kind of blue collar. My mom's a nurse. My dad was a cop in the New York City Police Department. So we just worked hard and always kind of wanted to prove yourself. That became a bit exacerbated because if you keep trying to prove yourself, you never really think you're enough. So I think it got to a point where I hit burnout, came over here, saw it, just my eyes were open. There was so much to learn. There was so much to kind of see. And I'm still learning. So I think for people to think, when does that moment hit or when does it change? I think I'll be, hopefully I'll be 80 and still learning, because that means, I'm not done. But I don't have kids yet. It's certainly, I'm 36 years old. Yes, get asked all the time, especially being married for so many years. And it's certainly something we want. I'd love to have kids. So the last year has been a tough one because it's balancing, the notion of wanting kids and having that, kind of come to fruition. And it's not always the easiest thing. Absolutely. So I think it's constantly in my head, but not being able to speak or feel maybe comfortable or feel like it's appropriate in certain settings. You just have to show up your best self, and hope that, the next day is better and better, and having a support system and having the right people. I really value people as I've gotten older, in the workplace, and compassion is really important.
I love that. Thank you. And thank you for being brave.
Yeah.
I do want to just make a point that if you are using London as the defining metric of a place that has work-life balance sorted, then I don't know how bad New York is.
We're not moving to New York.
Just
don't move to be clear on that.
You haven't sold New York to me if you're like, I came to London and I saw this new world.
I'm not trying to sell it either. No, it's a wonderful city. It's all about yourself, right? Personally, for me, I had a great time. I worked hard, made a career, but realized, okay, I can't sustain this to show up the way I think I belong to, with the core values that I truly am. And you kind of learn a lot about yourself when you go through something like that. So New York might be amazing for many, many people, and they stay there for the rest of their lives, and they're great.
They never know any better. But I wanted to just say something that I think is quite important about confidence in the workplace, because I think that, and I had a question for Chris, actually, Kate and I have been at Taboola quite a long time, we're known. I know, and I'm very lucky to have a boss who's we have the same boss, who's very understanding and who knows me, and he knows, if I'm picking up my kid at 3, he knows I'm not doing nothing, right? He knows I'm not just gone out for a coffee and pottering about. And that gives me confidence. And I also have the confidence to delete my emails because I know I'm not going to lose my job. I know no one's going to think I'm not doing my job well. And I have that confidence to do that. And we haven't had to sort of prove ourselves, I think. Latterly, I don't feel the need to prove myself. I think there's a couple of points. One is, and then my question for Chris, that it's very anxiety inducing when you have to leave early to pick up your kids or to do whatever else you need to do, right? Life responsibilities, they're not necessarily child related, and everyone else is still in the office and you're going, I'm never going to get promoted because I can't do that. I've got other things that I've got to do. Partners that want me at home because I'm their partner and they don't want me to work 5 hours a week. It puts pressure on relationships. I think it's very important for everybody that nobody else is working all night to get ahead, because it's about working efficiently, because it offsets, there's no equity there because you're working twice as many hours. And so this person over here, it's almost like, can we all make it our responsibility to not work two people's jobs? Because it's not fair.
I'd also just jump in there and say, last year, LinkedIn released some research that was proximity bias. It was actually the biases that individuals felt or faced, especially women, when they were not in the workspace, so they couldn't show the work they were predominantly doing, or young professionals who were joining remotely. And actually, your managers can't see the great work you're doing, the effort you're putting in, and maybe you don't have the same tangibles. And so actually the proximity of not being in the office, close to the office, or having to leave early meant that you felt like there was a bias against you.
Yeah. And I think, so lockdown and COVID is a massive example of this. So when we went into lockdown, Kate and I had already been at Taboola a long time. Right? We had those relationships, which Chris, you joined.
Just as,
and you had a kid and then we went to lockdown. So I was interested in perhaps your experience of kind of how did you not overcompensate for being like, nobody knows who I am. They might think I'm a complete dosser. I've just had a kid. I've gone on paternity leave. And now, who's this joker? Right? And we're like, we don't know this joker. We've never met him. I've never seen you. Right? We met in person for the first time, 3 years into you working at Taboola, something like that. So I was interested in how you manage that, because now, you're a big part of Taboola life and you've, built that through a remote.
Yeah, I think, first of all, I think you got to understand whether people have kids or not, because that's always a focal point, right? It's all relative to that individual person. We've all got challenges, right? We just put it a lot more down to kids because they're a challenge in themselves. They need us to survive, to actually survive. For me, I think it was quite not awkward, but when I first started, I was quite experienced in the industry anyway, so I was never suffering from confidence, challenges in that sense. But it was that I was in a team that was relatively young, quite new and stuff, and I was the only one, say, with a child. So I didn't want to always be bringing that to the party, as it were, saying, oh, I need to leave at this time, or I've got this, or if I'd had a terrible night. Didn't want to always be using that, because I felt in the back of my mind that, oh, that's just an excuse. If I don't understand that situation, then that's all I'm going to hear it from someone else, for example. So I think kind of developed a little bit of anxiety from having kids, having, the lockdown, the COVID and stuff. But then it hasn't hindered anything that I've been able to do at Taboola. I'm now kind of overseeing a small team that looks after strategic partnerships in the UK and the Nordics. So hasn't stunted my growth, as it were. But that's, super reliant on the people that we work with, the culture of the company. That's allowed me to do that, and now I'm in the position where, if I need to go at 3, go at 3. Or there's no point me coming in today because I'll come in to then have to leave anyway, because I do have a bit of a commute. So it was that balance as well. I kind of didn't want to always have to say, oh God, I've got to go today, or try and find someone to help. But it was definitely always in the back of my head, because you just thought, oh, well, I'm always the one that's seen to leave early, right? When it's not the case. People were doing it anyway. So it's super fluid. And again, the company's helped massively with that.
I have to jump in because Chris is on my team. So I have to give him a shout out because because it's something that not everyone is aware of the importance of, which is communication. Direct communication with your management and with the people around you, and being very open about, hey, this is my situation. But also Chris showed up every day and put his best foot forward. So I think it's being able to balance, when I'm there. And you said it's quality over quantity, but also communicating and feeling that your leadership should be able to accept any type of communication, right? Good leadership can pivot in different ways and be dynamic to the people that they're leading. And I think that's where, Serafina alluding to, we have a great manager. And he, we need to go easy.
Yeah, this isn't like not that great. He's quite great. He's fine.
I'm going to jump in here and just go into the secondary question, which I think you're already alluding to. But another question which came in, which was, okay, so you all manage people, or you're a part of a bigger team, or you have managers that manage you. If someone is starting a business, starting your company, coming into your premise, let's say Taboola in this instance, how do you start to have those conversations, set those boundaries without burning any bridges? because I think there's also a fine line. If I'm commuting 2 hours into the office and it's a 9 to 5 role, but I come in at 8 and actually I need to leave at 4, but then I'm coming in an hour earlier, I'm leaving an hour later, or it could be that I have accessibility needs. It could be that I need to work from home for a couple of days because I'm neurodivergent, whatever it might be. How do you have that conversation with your team lead, with your colleague, with your manager without burning bridges? Because, you know, especially when you're young and you're hungry, you know, when you're ambitious, you don't want someone to be like, excuses. Sonia's full of excuses and she doesn't want to work. She just shows up for the fun, but look at everything else she's doing outside.
Yeah, I think you have to. I think this comes from two directions. I think I would always encourage people to say that at the first point.
So
these are my needs, right? Like, this is what I'm offering you. You've given me 17 interviews as our traditional trajectory. You've decided I'm right for the job. This is what I need. This is what I need to be able to deliver on what you want from me. And I know that it's very easy very easy. It's easier for me to say that, right? Because I've been there. I've been at Taboola a long time. But I've been working a while.
But equally, the fact that you've been there a long time means that you're now open to listening and encouraging this behavior with the people that come in.
But I think that's the second part of it, is that we as managers have to make sure that our managers are receptive to that conversation and understand that conversation and open that conversation.
I was going to say, would you say raise it? Actually,
what do you need? What are your needs? And it might, you know, for us, it's probably children. That's the biggest thing that shapes our life. But there are lots of other things that mean people have to leave at 4, at 3, at 2, their carers, they have dependents, that whatever it is, right, in their personal life, that means that they need some flexibility. And we have to make sure that our managers know how to have that conversation with new employees, with existing employees, and then know how to support them. And if they don't, they know who to go to. Like they go to HR, they go to their manager and they say, look, I've got, you know, person A needs this. How do we support them? And that we make reasonable measures to accommodate that. And I think, but if we don't have managers who know how to do that, we've got nothing to start from, right? Because somebody will come with those needs and not be listened to appropriately. And that's actually I think training managers is one of the biggest parts of this puzzle, because if somebody comes to you and says, what do you need? You're like, oh, actually, you know, it would really help me to do this. Absolutely. Maybe they haven't even thought that it's a good idea to go and ask. I
agree. And then to piggyback, once, you know, you kind of settle on the management piece, because that is key to kind of making sure that people feel trusted. Yes. And able to once you're hired and they accept those requirements for you, then you're hired for a reason. So you have to show up and you have to do the job. But I also think, again, to loop back to leadership, I know in the past for me, I know the past for all of us probably, you look up and you look at the role models at the top. How are they conducting themselves? And how are they working? And how did they get to those roles? And how did they get to the next role? And if you see that they maybe don't have boundaries, or maybe are working at all times of the day, you go, I'm scared to now even ask for adjusting it. Or maybe I came and I worked my butt off and I did that for years. And now how do I change that without, you know, seeing that it won't work to get the seat at the table? And I think a lot of women, you know, or anyone really at this point is wondering, how do I get the seat at the table? And how do I do it in a way that isn't reflective of what's come before me? And is that a culture in this company that I'm in to have, you know, a change happen? You know, we're all about, you know, going through change management, and change management is very difficult and takes a lot of time. But I think it starts not just at the top, it starts at the new people coming in. And I think it's been so cool to see, you know, the younger generation come in and be so vocal, so confident, so impressive, that it's really cool. And that means even if the manager was trained well, but still is stuck a bit, they have to conform to a point, right? And they have to, you know, look to see, can we make this work?
But is there a right way of doing that? So again, we're talking about managing life, managing responsibilities, managing, and just kind of finding that balance. And of course, the International Women's Month or Day theme is digital for all, or embrace equity, depending on which one you follow, which is kind of weird this year, but whatever. Yeah. Digital for all is the UN, and then International Women's Day itself is embrace equity. At Taboola, we're talking about managing life, but I can also imagine that, you know, if a young professional came into the workplace of Taboola on day one and they took you to the side and they were like, this is what I need. As a manager, you're like, hey, hold on, you've just walked in here. You haven't even had time to like adjust to your team, but you're telling us what your needs are. Or is it that you create a plan? Is it that you email someone? Is it that you bring this up at the interview round? Like, what is the relevant way of doing it?
Can I say something? I want to hear what you guys think. My immediate instinct is to say, you have to prove yourself first. You have to work. It's not hard or maybe work long, historically speaking, but you have to work smart and you have to show up, right? You have to show your value and you have to show, you were hired for a reason. Great. But now you have to prove yourself. I still have that instinct to say, you still have to do the job. And then if you really want to succeed, you have to do the job better than everyone around you. But it's on the company to make sure that they provide that space for you to do that in an equitable way, which does not always exist. It barely exists in some companies. So I think it's a little of like, you still got to show up and work hard. But
I agree with that fully. Irrespective, you have to perform. Ultimately, the infrastructure has to be there in and around to allow you to do so, but you have to perform in any element of life, right? But we touched on it a couple of times on both sides, the balance. So it's the balance between you raising it yourself as a manager, but also someone having the confidence to want to bring it in the first place, right? You're saying if you've gone through your 15th interview and you're now at the top
17,
dog,
Chris, 17.
Now you're 17. now you're potentially scared because you see that certain person in the light because of how they operate. They then need to bring it to the table for you, because it is about that balance. And it's balance because if you're not communicating either at work or at home, I personally can't be good at work if I'm not fully invested in that. I also can't be a good dad if I haven't communicated properly and said, I'm not going to be here tonight. Or, you can't be operating in one environment while something's in the back of your head because you just can't perform. And I think it's very intertwined, but at the same time, it's, it has to be open communication. That's key. It's quite, cheesy to say, let's say, but a lot of people don't take it for granted.
I'm going to interrupt you. I think that instinct that Kate and I have, and all of us have, which is a little bit like, just get up, show up, work your ass off, and then we'll talk about it. I think that is quite an old school thing that we have, because that's how we
And that's what I'm trying to bring into, exactly.
And I think I think now we can't expect everyone, because then it's not an equal playing field, because somebody who's they're single, they live on their own, they've got zero, this person doesn't exist, but they have zero responsibilities, right, for whatever reason, okay? And they're perfectly happy and everything's great in their life, and they can come to work and they can work 12 hours a day. And then this other person over here who's caring for somebody who has, physical disability, whatever, they cannot. So they just cannot, they're not on an equal playing field with that other person. And we have to address that from day one, before the proving yourself point, which is the interviews, right? That we've interviewed people who we think are fantastic, and then it turns out they're not the right fit, and there wasn't a conversation about this or that, the other. So I think the interview process has to be made equitable. And then if we decide we're going to offer someone a job, we have to give them the best platform for success. And we have to do that at day one. And we have to approach candidates, I think, with that question, because they may not have the confidence or experience to ask that question. And it has to be part of that process. I'm not saying it is.
Would you argue, though, that I agree with you completely, but would you argue once we do settle on that, okay, we agree with the terms that you need, we're happy with that, hired, get the job. I still believe that that's the point where you have to perform.
Yeah, of course. Everybody is under a perform. I mean, at that point, if you're not doing what you need to do, you're not in. You're out. Right?
So, and I think that's the kind of tricky bit, is that's the bit where even if the company is, providing that space, we had agreements, it's having that constant communication that this is what performance means to me as a manager, and what does it mean to you? Because also aligning on what good performance means is critical in making sure both people and both parties, both teams are successful. Because many times you go, what are you motivated by? What are you motivated? Power, money, whatever. That once you find out what people are motivated are, that's very telling, and you could manage them differently. And on the flip side, it's the same thing of what is performance to you? What is good performance? What is great performance? And then you can go, okay, we can create a plan to get you there. But I think many times that good performance, great performance, or just showing up to work is defined very differently by different people. So I think until you kind of can get that also.
Absolutely. So setting out the criteria, understanding people's choices, taking into account the different circumstances that exist, clear communication in all cases, good, bad, or kind of, for the better. And confidence. We've touched on confidence quite a lot. We have 5 minutes left. What is your top tip for someone trying to build their confidence? How do you build your confidence? What's one thing that you do that you would want somebody else to do when it comes to confidence?
You guys are going to make fun of me, but and I've had my confidence completely rocked, and I've also been like, I'm awesome. I've had good times. We've all been there. But I sometimes will just pump myself up. I mean, in the morning when I'm getting ready, I sound really cheesy. I know you want people to listen to this. Hopefully they don't stop now. But I think
they'll definitely listen to this.
I'll put on like a good song, and I'll just be like
a song. Tell us what song. Tell us an album.
Now I'm really going to uncover my true self. It depends on what it is, what I'm about to do, what I'm presenting. But I love, Beyonce, Rihanna, Jay-Z. Just get
in front of the mirror with a hairbrush.
No, but I'm listening to him and putting my makeup on, and I'm thinking about what am I going to do today? How am I going to show up? And how do I want to perform? And also accepting that it might not go exactly how I planned. And it won't go exactly how I planned. So I pump myself up. I try to get in the spirit of you're great, you're going to be great. And then on the flip side, because I think, everyone here could probably relate, incredibly self-critical. I will beat myself up. I'll find out everything, I'll realize everything I didn't do, didn't say. And then the whole pump up morning is forgotten. So I try to just slow down, reflect, and be okay. Just accept the fact that, not everything's going to go as planned.
Love that. So find your pump up song, get yourself in the mood, power yourself up, but also
It could also be Enya. Love Enya.
And also-
very soothing. That's what
Love terrible choice. Edit that out. Enya, no.
Enya is
A hard
amazing.
no for Enya.
I looked in there.
It's like sort of,
else?
it's like sort of panpipes, kind of wafty.
do you have a pump up song, or is it a different kind of
Almost always
technique?
when I walk into the office along Aldgate, I listen to Enrique Iglesias.
Oh, nice.
Love it.
Oh, that's
Love
you.
it,
Is it
Spanish.
walking down the road? That's you. Okay.
I would
Love it. It really
guessed
cheers
that
me
from
up when I walk into the office because it makes me smile. And as you walk in, because I always find headphones really fascinating because I like looking around the tube and you wonder, everyone's listening to different stuff. Like some people listen to podcasts, some people's listening to Enya, and I just think it's really funny because people probably aren't looking to me going, she's probably listening to Enrique. And I just find it quite entertaining. It always makes me smile.
When they're looking at the playlist,
Yes.
and
What's
sometimes
that?
I look at that and I'm like, I did not expect you to be listening to this.
Yeah, that's not. I wouldn't match that. Yeah,
Chris's Taylor. No.
I like a bit of Enrique. Confidence, Chris, you were going to answer the question. Oh, sorry.
There's no specific tune as such. Yeah, I don't know. It's that understanding and letting yourself know that if it goes badly wrong, it's not actually that bad, is it? You can often, if you want to refer back to something where I don't know, if you're not really confident in speaking in loud groups, what if it didn't go well? According to you, it's always worse for yourself. Maybe that's just an innate trait where you're always a bit more self-critical. Fine, but what's the worst that could happen? And again, then just go out and do it again. Maybe a song will pump you up. I like, you look good, feel good. If I've got a big meeting, I'll think, I'm going to iron a shirt today and I'm going to put that on because I feel good.
Yeah.
I feel like I look good. And as long as I feel that, I don't really care. And then you walk in, you think, I'm going to perform now. Yeah. And then you just hope you do. And if you don't, it's all learning, right? And I think that comes with time. It's not a kind of right or wrong way of doing it. Absolutely not. But confidence can be grown for sure.
I think it's helpful for me to go back to a success and remember the feeling of that at the end of that meeting that went really well, or like you came out of a pitch and it was brilliant, and that feeling of like you were nervous before, you didn't think it was going to go well, and then you nailed it. Yeah. And like there's a few things like particular events or particular meetings or particular conversations I've been really nervous about, and then that really amazing feeling when it goes really well, and I try and take myself back to that feeling and the euphoria of like really delivering something, and go, I can get to that feeling again. And I'm going to kind of use that feeling and take myself there and think about that when I go into this meeting, because I can get to that feeling the other side of this, or whatever the thing is that you need the confidence.
Do you not think as well that it's good to feel nervous, right? You kind of want that because you know that you're dead.
If you're not nervous, you're dead.
I mean, come on, think about it. If you're not nervous, like,
what are you doing here? I'm a coach that we're going to get out of you alone is amazing.
It's really important. Absolutely
it's
crucial.
Either you don't care or you're not in an environment which is really important, right? Or valuable, let's say. So to feel that, you know that you're going to do something that you hope would make a difference or be valuable to someone or valuable for yourself. And it's
my final
Can I say one super fast? I think also when people say great job, I think we should say it. When I came over to this office, the reason I love this office and Europe and the culture here is because everyone was rooting for each other. It was like, you did great, that's amazing. And they were truly like comrades and friends. And I think we can't underestimate the value that just a nice job goes when your colleague or friend does a good job. Because then you, to Serafina's point, it's such a good one. You remember that feeling and then you go, oh yeah, I'm pretty good.
Nothing beats that.
Nice high five.
And my final question to you, because we've covered a spectrum of topics, everything from responsibilities, what that means for us, how to stay productive, as well as how to find and refine our focus, unlearning techniques, which I think are key when it comes to building boundaries, as well as confidence techniques. As managers, as senior leaders, what is the one skill that you look for in future or progressive talent that our listeners, our watchers, our audience members can go and start building up so that when they are ready for their next job to boost their confidence, ready for that next step in their career, they've really harnessed that?
I'm going to go with what I have right at the top of my head. Why not? It's always a good idea. I think realizing that when you get really good constructive criticism, it's gold. And if you trust the person and the person's giving it to you, it doesn't have to be, by the way, your manager. It could be anyone that you're comfortable with. But when you get that, treat it like gold and really apply it, and maybe ask and say, I don't really understand what you mean by that. And on the flip side, ask for it. If you're not getting it, ask for constructive feedback, ask for how I can, adjust, because sometimes what you see is not, what others do. So I think being very open to that space.
Thank you.
I was going to say open, but you've stolen open. So I'm going to go with transparent and then receptive. Pretty much the same, but yeah.
That's important.
Because you've got to be. For yourself, but also for the people that you're working with. How can they get the best out of you? And how can you help them get the best out of you? If that kind of makes sense. So, yeah.
Change up everything.
So I think for me, these both very valid. Obviously, those two are very important. I think if I take something more like business specific, maybe I think we care less how much you know about this topic. We care, or I care, how quickly can you take on board information, process it, analyze it, and make a reasonable recommendation. Yeah. And I think being able to make is that proactivity. It's, you might not know anything about topic X. Here's 5 pieces of information. What do you think we should do? And can you think about that and process it? And don't be frightened that you don't know anything about it. You don't have to know anything about it. But if I give you that and I give you a loose brief, can you turn it into something and come back to me and say, look, I didn't really understand that. I didn't understand that. This is what I understood. I think there's 3 things we could do. And I'm leaning towards B. But what do you think? And so anybody who can come back with something proactive, that's what you're looking for, in my view, for leaders, because you're not going to know everything. You're never going to know anything. And your team are always going to know more than you. I mean, my team, I can't be an account manager. I don't have the skills. My team are exceptional. But what they need from me is something different. Yeah. But from a future leader, I need somebody who, they come to me and say, here's the situation. And it's trying to unpack that and come up with a recommendation.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, that's amazing. Well, thank you so much for such a great conversation. I hope that you felt comfortable and there was a vibe. And I just think we had some great golden nuggets. Thank you to Taboola Her. Thank you to Taboola. If you are interested in a conversation, remember to subscribe. Link with everyone's LinkedIns. They are in the comment section or the caption section, so they will be available. Get in touch with Taboola for your future careers. Yes. And most importantly,
there aren't 17 interviews. Just
there are 17. There are
not 17. It's very streamlined.
And most importantly, take the learnings that have been shared today, because these are from managers, hiring managers, and people that have really leveled up in their own industry career, their confidence and their communication skills, but most importantly found or are finding that balance. And what I've really taken away from this conversation is that balance evolves over time, and it's okay to give it that space as long as you figure out what focuses for you. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having us. Yeah.
You can learn more about the podcast, get involved and listen via our website, www.lmfnetwork.com. You can follow us across all socials at LMF Network. Remember to like, subscribe, share and tell a friend. Get involved and drop us your comments or questions so that we can make sure that it's really adding value to your lives.